I was working in Mill Valley at the old mill school, teaching puppetry. I was building this as my first puppet. I had never done one before. And I had an interview, and he's quite famous. He's in the newspaper, But anyway. But he's never been used. He's never been in a puppet show. The costumes, of course, depend if it's a story, a legend. Then I do costumes related to that era. Like, for instance, this one here. This is the snake who bit a girl, and that's an African. That's from northern Rhodesia at the time. That's what it was called, and that's the costumes. I did research for that, and I mean the other one, that this here, the other is a Hawaiian legend, Laka's canoe, and those are the minihunis, which I really didn't have any picture of them, so those are my invention of what the minihunis, which are the spirit of the forest, are. That's my interpretation, and that's Laka, and that's that legend. And I've done a few European and different legends, and then some the children and I compose. They make a puppet, they build in a construction program, they build their marionettes, and then from that marionettes we come in here and we play around and we create a story.
Okay.
And then we rehearse, and it becomes refined in time through rehearsal. It's a lot of fun.
I bet.
That part I really enjoy. Mm-hmm. The construction is much more rigid because you have to deal with tools,
Sure.
Saws and hammers and nails and sewing, exposed to sewing and designing costume and all that. So that's a little more precise. But the creating of a story is just, throw it out there, and that's wonderful. Just see what happens. The backdrops I usually make, I love making things. So I build the little houses, and some of the backdrops I have created. But sometimes they help with the props. But I think like some of the props, like that backdrop, that was for an Italian, the Count's beard, that was an Italian story. That was the backdrop for that one. I did for a while, did make a lot of masks. At one point in the 80s, I was doing masks on people's faces in the streets of Ferndale. It's like plaster gauze, and it's a quick thing. I would make a mask very simple, and then the individual could go home and decorate it. So they were just white masks. I did that for a while, and I did it for people. Some people in the community have their masks. I don't decorate them. I let them do it, finish them. So that was fun. So I did that for a few years. I'm not doing masks anymore. I'm doing mosaics now. It's a thing to sit down and work, which I don't have anything here. And I paint every night, though. I do paintings. I like that. Okay. These are merely display.
Okay.
Of other. Now, I did make this one, but all of these, they're Walt Disney characters. Those, and most of those are all hand puppets, which I don't use anymore. So they're just collectibles. And the ones that, what did you call them again? Not dioramas.
Oh, the shadow boxes.
Shadow boxes are over here. You can't really see them very well. This is one of them. I made this, it's mostly made with found objects. It's called a birthday ship. I collect a lot of things. I collect anything that seems like it can be brought to life in another form. I collect it. And these are little pieces of driftwood that I've collected through the years. And I was able to, make little people and little animals, little flying animals. And that's something these are much more recent. This is much more recent. And the one above, too. The one above, I sculpted the white part, and I didn't want to paint them. Just leave them white. They're more, more human-like. And the body parts are also found. I think one is out of redwood, one of them is pine, one of them is out of driftwood, and one of them is out of bones. You can't see the bone ones that's lying down. He's a funny guy. So they're all made from a different kind of material. But the head is all the same. These are made out of different materials. All things that I collect. I mean, I have bones, I have corks and wood and saws to cut the wood and shape the wood. Yeah, yeah, whatever seems to, you know, inspire me at that moment for whatever I'm doing, that's what it is. Some of the recycled fabric is something of the past, of something maybe I wore, or it's older. It has time on it, or I don't know what you would call it, life, and I like that. I like that more than if it came right from the fabric store, because it has a story itself. It has a story. Right now it's very crowded because I'm doing inventory of the puppets and all, so everything is out. There's no performance happening. A local artist built this stage. It's wonderful. For years, I'm able to disassemble this and load it in my vehicle. I did that. I had not doing it anymore. And go on location and set it up and disassemble it again and bring it home. I added this feature because only having two hands, I can only work really two puppets at a time. So this holds a marionette. These hold the marionettes up. So I can very quickly go, get it off stage, on stage. It was just an idea that came to me, and it was really a very good idea because it really works, and it's been very helpful for years. And so I can, and the children that have done shows, they come here. Although I have another stage that's portable that another local person, Howard Oram, built years ago, and that is more for the students. I set that outside in the summer. So if the children come and they want to play with puppets, they can do it out there. The marionettes that we make are very simple. They have to be simple because 9-year-old up to 14 have worked them. So that's usually the age that makes a marionette. They don't do much. They do enough, but they walk. They can walk. But this, oh my darling, you can't. Though some of them walk better than others. And their hands move. You can move their hands. And then by walking, you just go side by side and move it forward. That's how they walk.
Your life journey began in Rome, Italy, and over time you ended up in Petrolia, California, and we'd like you to please share with us about that journey and how you ended up settling in the Mattole Valley.
It was a friend, a neighbor friend, Rex Rathbun. We lived together in Marin County, and he was coming to Humboldt because he wanted to relocate. And he mentioned it, and I was thinking about that, and I thought, oh, maybe. He says, yeah, come with me, come and see. So we came up, and there was a place, a house where he would stay for the night and talk to the owner of the land and different things, and I stayed there. And people were very nice. The store people were nice. Everybody was friendly. And this is interesting. And I walked behind the house to look at the river, and I was looking at the river. I smelled something. This is really strange. I had a smell, a very familiar smell. I didn't know. I had no idea what it was and where it was from or anything. And that clinched me. That smell directed me to locate in Petrolia. That's very strange, but also the people that were welcoming. And there was a situation. And when I did finally make the move, we lived in a trailer by the river, near where the smell I had smelled. And my two children and I lived there. And people were wonderful. They connected the electricity. They dug a septic. Everything was done for us living there in this trailer. I couldn't have asked for it. I couldn't have even imagined such a thing. And so from there on, things unfolded. This place came for sale, and I had a house down in Marin, and I sold that to buy in this, and then things just continued on all these years, living here, this place. Yeah, that's how it came up.
And did you ever identify the source of that smell?
No. I've always been wondering. It was just really, I mean, it sounds very peculiar and very strange, but it just grabbed me. And I knew that smell. I knew that it was something, a part of me from something. Born in Italy, mother American citizen, war, danger for American citizens, the Nazis, the fascists, Mussolini. She took the last ship to the United States before the war broke, perhaps, and didn't want to take me, too dangerous. So she left me with grandparents and uncle and aunt, who also, my aunt was an American citizen, but she was married, so she stayed, and I could have been. I mean, I was born so I became, what is it called, naturalized or something? Okay. So she left me because that would be, safer for me, but it wasn't, particularly because then my family was in fear because they were, my American citizen, and also we were in an area where a little town, a little farm, we were living on a farm, and behind the farm was the railroad and the road, and so I came here when I was 9.5. I was separated from my mama for 5 years, so I have to do the math, heavy math. But anyway, yeah. So we were on the run. We were on the run. That was life, and I'm telling you, life is different when there's a war, and you can't imagine it or even think about it because it could be different in any situation. They're all different. Yeah, we were on the run. My grandmother knew a miller in the hills, and that's where we stayed there in a mill for a while, and that was good, I mean, because, they had potatoes and the mill. It was a chestnut mill with the wheel, the water wheel going and the thing going around. And then I do not know what was really happening. I had no understanding of the war and the whole situation. So then we left the mill and we went to live in a shed, a drying shed. And there are no toilets, nothing. I have no idea how we managed. But I remember one day I was picking mushrooms for breakfast. You could go out and get mushrooms. And in a certain part of the field, I was stepping it. The ground seemed to bounce and I couldn't understand. So I looked down and I scraped the earth and there was a little bit of a hole, and I looked and there was a room. A room was below the ground with benches on it. I saw that. I never spoke about it to the family. But as I got older, I understood that room was probably for refugee running away. Maybe, Americans, Jews, whoever, running away. And I guess my family must have been involved in that, but I had no idea. I found that out later. I assumed later. And I remember when the war was over and I went back to the farm. It took a long time because there were mines all over the place. We lived underneath a stairway, but it's all part of life. I remember looking at the farm, standing on the road and thinking, these were one of the insights, noble insights of children. And I thought, wait a minute. I remember running away from the Americans because they were shooting the planes, running away from the bullets. Okay, they were our enemies, but the Germans are. And now the Americans are giving me chocolates. You stand in the food line, and they were very nice. But before they were killing me, and now they're not. And I thought, I don't understand. I thought that was the end. That was the end for me to be seriously involved in political or that world because it was too confusing and too chaotic. And I just didn't want to be part of it. That was one of the lessons of life that I learned from that. So it makes me, I think, maybe somewhat solitary. Maybe that's what makes me solitary. I don't know. It was just too crazy. So then I came to the States and it was all, I learned English and here I am. I love being here and I do most of my work in the night because there's no phone ringing. I mean, in the daytime, I take care of the chores and the household things, you know, gardening, getting the wood together, making walls and whatever. And sometimes I work on an art project, but mostly the art project, I seem to get a second wind at 10 p.m. And from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., I do most of my creative work in the night. There's something, in the night you can hear the frogs, you don't hear very many cars. And if you look outside, the moon, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it's a stillness that is very, it just inspires me or just calms me down. I don't know which, you know. These are copies of different paintings, and they're not, I have to add, this is part of a series called Unknown Floating Organisms, so I should, well, I put them, this is first, that's still part of the organism. Let me see. This is called Reflection, that's a whole different style. This is called another organism, this is called Interview. This is called Intimate Voices. And this one is called, these are recent. That's, what is it called? Sphere. When I do it, I just do it and I can't go back and look because I don't know. I could have put anything. I could have used anything that would render itself to the feeling that I want to communicate. Whatever medium it is and how fast it is. Okay, that's one of them. Yeah, yeah, so was this one. Yeah, I like this one. Well, I was exposed to the art because of my family in my early childhood. A lot of art and music, opera mostly. I was exposed a lot to opera. So that must have some influence. I mean, I've seen different eras of, you know, of painting. And I have an uncle who was a sculptor in San Francisco, and he did a lot of statues at different churches, you know, and Stations of the Cross in churches. And he was actually the director of their art festival in the, was it 60s, 70s, maybe 60s. San Francisco had a, you know, a civic center. They had a big art festival, and he was the director, and so I was into the arts all the time. Exposed to it, and every member of my family does some aspect. My sister painted, my mother did a little, my sister did theater. I have a cousin who painted, an uncle who did jewelry that I know I don't wearing. So it's there. The art is just flourishing in my environment.
And then I understand while you lived in the Bay Area, you studied at the San Francisco Arts Institute.
Well, I have to correct that because sometimes it appears, sometimes when things are written, they're not always exactly, they imply and they're not, you know. I took a few courses, but I was not a student, a full-time student. I was married at the time, and I did a couple of classes, and I did a few classes at State College, San Francisco, the State College, but I did not do the whole course. I didn't do a lot of, but I mean, so if you say then it's assumed that you were a graduate. Well, I am not a graduate. I did take theatrical makeup at City College of San Francisco, and that was wonderful. How you could do the chiaroscuro. And I did that once, and I went to my family's house with the makeup on, and they thought I had been in an automobile accident. I know. So, I mean, you know, little things here and there. How it came to puppets was before that. It was just, well, I started a child care center, which I called the Children's Hostel, which was having children in my home on vacations for parents and on weekends for overnighter. It was an overnight kind of thing because I felt that was needed more than well, I'm sure daycare was needed, but I didn't want to do the daycare. I wanted to do something more so that the child could come and sleep and the parents would have a respite. So when I started that, I found it like I wanted to do story time for the children and entertain them. And I would browse thrift stores for little chairs, which I still have, and different things that would make this, the story time pleasant, and art supplies. And as I was browsing through a particular Mount Carmel in Mill Valley, I was browsing through there, I saw a box on the floor with lots of heads and hands and whatever. And I asked the lady who was in the store, I said, "Ooh, what have you got here? What is this?" And she goes, "Oh, that's just a mess. Well, you can have it for 75 cents." And I go, "Oh, okay." And and I like to make things, broken things and all. I go, "Okay." So I took that box home. I realized, I knew afterwards as I picked it up that they had been marionettes that were broken. And I thought, "Oh, whoa, this is great." So I went to a local store that was selling brand new marionettes. I looked how they were made. I didn't go to marionette puppet school. I went to the store and saw how they were made and how they were strung. I went home and I strung them. And that's how it all started.
Okay.
Just by a box.
Wow.
It wasn't intended.
Mm-hmm. A very important box.
A very important box. I know. It was something else, yeah. And then I started. Then I decided I would teach at Old Mill, and then we moved to Bolinas, California, and in Bolinas I taught at the Bolinas School puppetry, and we did a show. And that show, what they did was grand. It was called A Small Christmas, an original story with Santa and their puppets. It was absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. So that was the very first show that that I helped children create. Mm-hmm. And it was really wonderful. Mm-hmm. The audience loved it. The kids were happy. It was great. And that kind of got me. Mm-hmm. And then so when I came up here, mm-hmm. I moved here in 1974. I did the same thing at the school here. They made puppets. We made up a story, myself and them. I had something going, and they kind of elaborated. Together, we made a story. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that you could present it beside the Grange, besides here, was 4-H. So I was a 4-H leader. So then there was a competition, a regional competition, and we performed. The kids performed at the competition, and they won a gold medal, the only gold medal on the North Coast. It was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So we were invited to go to Sacramento to do that. They were on local TV, NBC or CBS or something. The kids were all on TV because they had won this wonderful award. Mm-hmm.
And then when you and I first met in the late 1970s, you were touring with the puppet troupe that you had founded by then, Pancho Polo Puppets.
Well,
that's
another story.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear about it.
Well, grants were given to local artists, and I received a grant to tour. That was my thing. I would like to tour libraries and different places with these puppets. So one day I received a phone call from Sacramento. This is a really interesting story. And a gentleman is saying, "Hello, Ruth Macchiarini." "Yes, yeah. Well, we'd like to do an article on you." An article. And I said, "What?" I said, "Do you know where I am?" I said, "I live in the middle of nowhere. Why are you even calling us?" Barbara Bush and I were the two recipients of that grant. And he says, "That's why. Because you are in the middle, because you are nowhere." Mm-hmm. So then he came up and did a story for their thing, and I have that. But anyway, so she and I were the recipient of that year for that particular grant. Mm-hmm. So it was because we were obscure. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you toured with Pancho Polo Puppets for many years, mm-hmm. with a company of young puppeteers.
Sometimes, yes. The young, they performed at a library. Actually, the last one was in 2000. The last one was 2006. With who? I forgot even. Yeah. With Calista and Oliver Grant. Those were the two puppeteers that performed at the main library. Mm-hmm. Before that, Malia performed at the library. Andreas And they performed at, the cultural center that used to exist. There's no more cultural center.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
I
on
know what
First
you're
Street,
talking-
I think.
mhm.
They performed. So, and they performed in Ferndale, at the Ferndale, at different places. The kids toured. And and also I myself have done it myself, alone, without children. Both have happened. Oh, the most elegant one, was at the Eureka Inn. The Literacy Project was sponsoring yearly presentations. Rudy Galenda was there, and I don't know who else was performing, and I was there, and that was kind of a different place to perform rather than a mall or the Eureka Mall.
I'm wondering, what would the ideal future home for your collection look like?
Oh my gosh, if the ideal future, I don't think possible, because someone who would just take over the whole thing and continue to performing for children and teaching puppetry so that they can express themselves, because that's really important, I think, for them. They always express themselves who they are at that time. It's a nice thing. And that would be the ideal thing. And I know people think, oh, I want a puppet, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll give the Pellman puppets, the English puppets, somebody may want to get those. And maybe the Mexican puppets, somebody may want those. I thought about just dividing things. But then I'm thinking the local puppets that the children made here and my puppet, I'd like them to remain here.
Okay.
The Los Cos camp is going to provide a space, I think, for them. I would like them to stay here. That's the only request I have. That I don't know, it just feels that way, for them to be here. That way the descendant, I already have descendant, a father who made a puppet and his son made a puppet. Both of them, both Lassif and Danny Rathbun. Their son both made puppets, and then I have both puppets. So that's kind of neat. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Well, I have Lakas Canoe, is Hawaiian, one from Africa, one from Sweden, Italian, all over, whatever. If Japanese, some stories have a moral, have something that they say. Most of them have a moral, and those. I mean, I do Aesop's fables, a lot of Aesop's fables. The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and I forgot which other one. I don't even remember right now. But anyway, yeah, stories, and then sometimes they have to adapt to. I can adapt them to that art form. How easily can I adapt them if I can make something or not or whatever. And they just come across, and I read books and found them in books. Or somebody will tell me, like the stonecutter is really lovely. That's a really Japanese one that really has a great moral for me. That's that one over the one that I'm doing with, and I think I did that at the community center. I'm thinking of doing it again in October. The Stonecutter is a Japanese story. It has to do with a simple, gentle stonecutter who goes every day, he cuts a stone, he's happy, he goes back home and he goes to sleep, and every day he does this routine. One day a prince goes by in this wonderful lofty chair, and behind him are gentlemen and music and the dancing girl. He has a whole journey, and he goes, oh! And he goes, my gosh, look at him. I want to be like him. So he goes to he calls the spirit of the mountain, and the spirit of the mountain says yes, and he says, oh, I want to be like the prince. And the spirit of the mountain says, yes. Well, anyway, this goes on. So he becomes the prince, and then he's not happy. He sees the sun. The sun is so powerful. And, it can burn things. It can do this and that. He wants to be like the sun. So he becomes different things. He becomes the sun. He becomes the rain. He becomes all these things. And finally, the spirit of the mountain is really kind of tired of all this. He just leaves. And leaves him, and then finally he becomes the mountain. Tatu becomes the mountain, and one day, as he is the mountain, he feels something at his feet, and it's a lowly stone cutter chopping up his feet. So it's like
Yeah.
the reverse.
My question is, how would you like to be remembered?
Oh, how would I like to? I don't know. Never thought about it. I don't know. I thought about time, and I thought about human civilization. I think about things like that because I'm alone in the middle of the night, and it allows you to ponder a lot. I don't know. There could be right now a tidal wave that could wipe this whole thing, and we would all go down. And then who remembers any of us that we'll be buried? You know, who knows? And maybe this will continue on. There will be skyscrapers built here and freeways. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. I think about this and I say, this is archaic. It's already archaic. The children are zooming in into electronics. They're being absorbed into that. This is tactile. This is physical. This is earth. This is earth. We as a species are evolving. We're always evolving. Everything is changing. How are we evolving? What is the effect that all this technology and the vibrations of the electrical thing and whatever that we're doing and the food that we eat and everything that's happening at this time in human civilization, how is that going to affect us? I don't know. You know?
We don't know.
We don't know. But I see when I go to the doctor's office, I see people sitting there and they're not there. None of them are there. They're sitting, their body's there on the chair, but they're in here. They're in here. And where does that take you? I don't know, because I don't do that. And the only reason I don't do it is not because I'm against it or anything. I don't have the time. I am so busy enjoying myself, doing what I know and what I can do, and being so fulfilled by my projects that I haven't taken time to sit down and do that yet. Maybe I will. I don't know. Maybe not.
Ruth, thank you so much for sharing your time and stories. It's incredibly engaging.
Oh, well, thank you.
We could go on
This
for
was
days,
great,
I'm
interesting.
sure. Yeah.
It wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be.
No, you're
I
marvelous.
just babbled on.
No, you did not. We were both captivated. Yeah.